It turns out that Myth of Empires, the game we covered a little while ago as being an upcoming PvP sandbox MMO, is actually getting a closed alpha test on April 16th and registration has already begun. Wanted to bring you this video as an announcement for it, but also, when I talked about how I was waiting for a translation to get done a few days ago, this game is the reason why. Now the first and quicker thing to go over would be the Skirmish Arena. This is described as an individual game mode in Myth of Empires, and in the video description they state that it's a mode where players can train their combat skills on horseback or just on foot. In this video showcase, we're able to see some more of the different weapon fighting styles like the two-handed club, the crescent blade, and what the couch lance and spear combat looks like. The next thing is a gameplay video they released about a week ago, but more than that, it's actually an introduction to the game and its systems. This is actually what I was waiting on the translation for because I wanted to talk about the key points they go over during this video. So let's do a breakdown starting from the very beginning. Starts off with the narrator introducing themselves as Akachi. They say that this is an internal test report of Myth of Empires. Skipping down a bit, they talk about how the game was always typically compared to Battlefield games. The translator made some notes here of a game I don't recognize, but basically, games like Conqueror's Blade, Blood of Steel, and Mountain Blade is what I think they're getting at. Which honestly does make sense because as we know, the game does feature directional based combat, and if you look at the graphical style, it does follow really close to these other types of games specifically. Not to mention the feature aspect like the troop commanding we can do in Myth of Empires. But just under that, they say that the proper way to describe this game would be something like Ark Survival Evolved, basically Ark as we know, and Conan Exiles, which I can totally see that because of how they showcase the gathering aspect in this video. The animations look very similar to both of those games and also the building, at least in Conan Exiles case from what I can remember, plus the animal care system. Just the look of the UI during parts they showcase the horses totally reminds me of games like Ark Survival and Conan Exiles. Because of how this looks and functions from what we've seen, I wouldn't be surprised if other animals are capable of being tamed as well, like the bears that get showcased during this video. But after that, they start talking about the game's backstory and crafting aspect. They say that under the background of the 3rd century that this game takes place in, during this period in the Eastern continent, players will need to develop through a series of production activities. They start to mention how we need tools to cut wood, mine resources, to hunt, and to build a wide range of workbenches after we get a certain amount of materials. Alongside that, we'll also be able to unlock advanced tools and items, reuse them to improve productivity, and gradually expand their power. They also talk about how food and items like it doesn't just fall into your hands. Akachi starts talking about one of the previous videos where they show the farming system. For this example, the main food they made was steamed bread. To get steamed bread, for instance, you need to get a hoe first, look for a piece of farmland, then start to expand the soil until it reaches the standard. Along with this, it's also necessary to use buckets for irrigation. The seeds are then sown after the preparation work is complete, and fertilizer can also be applied during crop growth. When that gets done, we harvest the wheat, put that bad boy in the stone mill to get flour, and then use that flour in the stove to make bread. So a pretty intricate process. I'm hoping the crafting system follows a similar amount of effort because games like Mortal Online have really made me love in-depth crafting systems. And for the next part, they start talking about the construction system. So long story short, from what we've seen so far, they say that we might think at first glance that the construction is simple. Well, not only is it not simple, but home location is very crucial because the map is very big. And along with that, Akachi says that there are all kinds of wild animals, abandoned resource points, refugee camps, and hostile NPC garrisons. And also, the PvE content of this game is very challenging. None of the wild monsters of the same level are easy to provoke. However, there are multiple ways that players can deal with them. You can of course call more friends to fight with you. You can also use the architecture to do some tricks, which I think is what they're showcasing here. So how you would like trap animals in some sandboxes by building a giant box, then opening up the door so they run in and close it behind them. This might also be a useful thing for taming if that's a thing in Myth of Empires. And skipping down a bit, they talk about how the test they did only opened up a quarter of the entire map. And as we talked about in a previous video, we found during the Q&A that they have a plan for a grid system. So more than likely the upcoming alpha will only be spanning over the course of one or a few different zones. And to add on to that, Akachi also says that the complete map will include areas with geographical differences. So I'm assuming they might be talking about different biomes. Maybe we'll see some snow-based ones, full-on desert, things like that. Oh, and I wanted to point out how they showcase some more of the follower system during this footage. We can see a little bit of how they'll react to enemy players while defending your territory, or even how they'll operate on machines. This definitely screams Conan Exiles more than anything with the thrall system. Just like how you can place NPCs on benches to increase productivity or provide other bonuses like in Conan, seems like the same exact thing is going on here. Even the binding system is very much the same. We learned in previous footage how you would use a club to get an NPC down to low enough health, and then you can proceed with the converting phase. And just like the Wheel of Pain, it looks like we can place these thralls or followers on a post and eventually they'll be under our control. And that brings us to the skill tree. So Akachi says that player characters are divided into 25 different abilities, and all talents correspond to one or more actions, and performing corresponding actions can improve the proficiency of this talent, so I'm assuming they're saying that you can, like learn blacksmithing for instance, or a certain recipe underneath it, and then as you continue to use that, you'll gain proficiency. And high proficiency can greatly enhance your corresponding abilities and unlock special skills. And by the way, I'm purely reading from the translation, so not all of it might make sense, but I'll try to piece it together as we go. Now then they say that each talent has more than 10 skills, and that we'll have to work together with our teammates and our guildies if we want to find success. The next thing they talk about is the process and details about the horses. So firstly, Akachi says that horses are definitely one of the most crucial companions in the Empire. Players can capture and tame multiple wild horses, they can speed up your travel, help you carry heavy things, and even help with production efficiency. Different horses will have different qualities, and as we can see in the video and they talk about later, this game does allow you to customize the horse's equipment as long as the training of the animal is highly skilled. Pretty much saying that your horse most likely needs to be at a higher level to wear horse gear. And as they level, or just in general, the horses do have attributes that can upgrade and also obtain special skills as a warhorse. Also, we can in fact reproduce a large number of high quality horses by breeding. There's a limit of how many horses you can have, but that can be increased by some methods they don't describe here. What Akachi talks about next is the NPC system. So it turns out that we can only have 10 NPCs under our control, which makes sense because technically if you have 4 people, that's 40 NPCs that you have under your belt. And if you add 40 to 80, good luck on that FPS is all I can say. So they say that most NPCs in the wild can be accepted as one's own general. I'm not sure if they mean that there's a chain of command you can employ to have more troops, but they do say there are 2 ways you can come into contact with them. One way is to recruit them at the refugee camp. This is something we saw in previous footage, how you could obtain these NPCs through diplomatic means, and the other way would be to engage them in combat. They do talk about these followers as having stronger attributes and characteristics if they're high quality. And just like with the horses, we are able to customize our followers' equipment as well. Now even though we can only have 10 NPCs total, it's only possible to lead 5 of them into battle at the moment. The other 5 can most likely be used as people that gather, or you can place them on your workbenches like shown several times throughout the footage. So just like Conan Exiles, Akachi says that all the NPCs have their own set of proficiency systems similar to the player. High proficiency can improve the quality of items produced by the NPC, and you can even selectively add some to them, which I'm guessing they're saying as they level up, you'll be able to distribute those points to the followers. And just like we said, the next part says you can cultivate them into professional lumberjacks, blacksmiths, cooks, tailors, and so on. And actually I like this. If you don't want them to work, you can just build a training dummy and have them practice martial arts on that. Totally reminds me of Kenshi, and I love the crap out of that game. Skipping down to the last part, they start talking about both the siege system and the skirmish arena. For skirmish, they describe it as a battle arena, and they say we can play games on separate servers. For the siege system, there's no real crucial information here, except for them saying that it's the highest level of conflict between forces. But during the video, we can see multiple siege engines like the catapult, alongside showing how it gets built, a siege tower, which looks like it'll be very fun to use, and the battering ram while it's attacking the gate, with the barrel of fire being dropped right next to it. Overall, it seems like they've got a nice mesh between those survival sandboxes and the Battlefield games like Mount and Blade. Really looking forward to seeing what happens here, and again, don't forget to sign up for the closed alpha, and hopefully everything goes okay for the game's future. Thanks so much for watching this far, hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful night or day. Farewell.